on, guys? Welcome to LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. Going to be rounding up UFC 262 and previewing the upcoming event. I'm Ryan Galloway with Jordan Ellis here. Jordan, we had a pretty monster card this past weekend, UFC 262. We got crowned the first lightweight champion in a little bit since Khabib's retired. And aside from that, we had some big moments, a couple of injuries along the way. How do you think the main event compared to the anticipation for this lightweight matchup? Do you think it lived up to the hype?
Exceeded the hype. I don't think this isn't the fight everyone wanted, is it really? I think the majority of people will accept that Charles Oliveira is one of the top contenders, but I think a lot of people wanted to see him in there with Dustin Poirier, and we didn't get that. And people, we're giving Michael Chandler some stick, and you heard Tony Ferguson say Dana White privilege, and do you think he got gifted this shot? But he showed that he's a true contender, and I actually think the fight more than delivered. That it lived up to expectations and more. It was a great fight.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And like people that are criticizing Michael Chandler can't really criticize him after that performance, because even in a loss, that first round was a domination by Chandler towards the end there. It could have honestly been stopped towards the end, but Oliveira managed to survive. He held on, and in the second round, he just blitzed him at the start and put him away. Perfect left hook. Never seen a left hook that clean in a while, so it was good to see, especially after being in the sport so long and finally getting gold. He clearly was emotional after, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was a brilliant story for him, because he's been in the UFC since he was, I think, about 20. He's been up and down, and then he's just come into form at the right time. He's only 30 or 31 now, so he's in his prime. He can potentially get better than this. So it's an exciting time to have him as champion. He looked great. He gets all the punishments. He answered some questions about heart. He stuck in there. And then he come out and he just showed he's the cleaner boxer, because I think that's what the difference was in the end, is that when Oliveira had Chandler hit, he was cleaner with his work and got the finish that way.
Yeah, and I mean, Chandler, when he did injure Oliveira, was really that he blitzed him forward and threw big shots. It wasn't like he was counter-striking, landing technical blows. But props to Chandler. I think, I honestly was one of those people that saw what he did to Hooker and was still skeptical. But after seeing what he did in that first round, he's definitely a top lightweight. I think he's going to hang around that top 5 for a little while now. I'd be interested to see who he gets next. I feel like Gaethje would be a fun one. Aside from that, Benil Daryush might be a fun one. I really do want to see what he does next. But for Oliveira, I think it's pretty clear, even though Dana White hasn't admitted it, it'll be the winner of Conor and Dustin, right?
Yeah, and I think just to go on Chandler, I think he looked fantastic. I actually picked him to win, and in the first round, that's how I expect them to do it. I expected him to be able to land clean on Oliveira and hurt him, and he did do that. He'll be kicking himself going back into the changing rooms and going home now, because it was there for the taking. He could have took it, but he just wasn't probably just wasn't calm enough in the moment, and didn't do what he needs to do. Maybe stayed in the guard when he shouldn't have stayed in the guard. He should have stood back up, and just things like that. And then he ran into a big punch. So he'll be annoyed with himself. But Oliveira is he looked fantastic, and now he's the champion. And as you say, it's going to be Dustin against Conor. Dustin vs Conor. It's going to be that winner. And it's a big fight either way, isn't it? Obviously, Conor McGregor's the biggest fight in MMA. But Dustin Poirier's getting there as well, and with another emphatic victory over Conor McGregor, just whichever one of them gets the shot next, it's going to be a huge night for Oliveira, a huge payday, and well done to the guy, because as we said earlier, he's put in the years, he's put in graft, and he's been down, and now he's up, and yeah, good luck to him.
And I know we did speak about it last episode, but do you think that the belt changes hands after seeing how Oliveira dealt with this test? Do you think he holds on to the belt for a while, or do you see it passing around from a few of those top lightweights?
I would worry for Charles Oliveira if you're going in with Gaethje, because I'd say Gaethje's probably one of the hardest punchers, if not the hardest puncher at lightweight. So if he cracks him, I think he might be able to finish the job. Him against Poirier is more interesting, because Poirier is not necessarily a one-punch knockout artist, but if he gets you against the fence as Chandler got Oliveira, then I think he'd close the show there as well. So, but I could see that fight going more into the fourth and the fifth and the championship rounds went with them. So, yeah, there's some really good challengers, as we spoke about for so long. Lightweight's the division; it's the number one division in MMA. This UFC division is stacked. So if Oliveira is able to make 1, 2, 3 defenses of that title, he goes up there with some of the greats we've ever seen. But it's going to be tough, and I think it will start with Dustin Poirier or Conor McGregor. and that really is as tough as it gets.
And before we do move on, I feel like we have to bring it up. Khabib obviously said he wanted a challenge before he did retire, then he retired. Who knows if he actually said that or if that was Dana White just trying to sell for Khabib to come back. Do you think if Oliveira puts together like a couple of tight defenses, 3 or 4, he can entice Khabib to come out of retirement and take that fight? And do you want to see that fight? Do you think that's an interesting matchup?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. Because he's got the jiu-jitsu, hasn't he? I think the question about Tony Ferguson was, he's got crafty submissions, where Oliveira is definitely a better submission artist than Tony Ferguson. So it'll be interesting to see how Khabib deals with that. And as Oliveira goes on, he's getting even cleaner on the feet. That punch he started the end against Chandler was so clean, so precise. It was a brilliant shot, and he could catch Khabib coming in with something like that. So I think if Oliveira is able to beat, someone like Dustin on top of this, I think Khabib would consider coming out, because he's only 32. It took him a while to actually say, "Oh, I'm out," and
yeah, so that was the main event for the lightweight title. But in the co-main event, we had another lightweight matchup. Tony Ferguson taking on Benil Daryush. This was really Tony Ferguson's last chance to solidify himself as a top contender in the division. And unfortunately, it didn't go his way. And as I predicted, Daryush relied heavily on his wrestling, and he just took the easiest route to victory, which he should have done, right? Especially in the showcase in the co-main event of this pay-per-view. I know he got a lot of boos because he was fighting Ferguson, and it wasn't the most entertaining way to win the fight. But hey, he didn't take any chances, and he won. What do you think?
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Tony's probably still a danger if he's on the feet, especially against someone like Daryush, who I don't necessarily consider a top contender even after this win. I think he just did what he had to do. He got there, he dominated them, and Tony just doesn't seem to have anything off his back anymore. He just seems to, you want to see people pop back up, and he doesn't pop back up anymore. He kind of accepts the position and allows people like Daryush to grind him out for 3 downs. So huge win for Daryush. Yeah, really big one. I thought Tony might be able to roll back the years in this one, but it doesn't seem to be there anymore. But I'm sure he'll be back again, and we'll still see him in some fun fights. I don't want to see him retire. I think he should go out and try and get a win, maybe against some lower level opposition who aren't going to wrestle him. That would be fun. Daryush, though, he's kind of cracked it now, because although I'm saying I don't necessarily think he's a threat for the belt, I think he's going to be in a big fight next. So it could be Chandler, it could be Gaethje, it could be someone like that, and it's huge.
Yeah. And what did you think of that heel hook attempt? Because that was bad. Tony, that's the one thing I noticed in that moment. I was like, with the armbar that Oliveira had on him, I was like, all right, maybe he's double jointed like he says, and like he didn't need to tap. But in this one, he should have tapped, and you could just tell he just wasn't going to tap. He was going to let his whole knee blow out. And some miracle he survived that. But yeah, did you think that was close? Did you think we'd see him get submitted for the first time in his career?
I thought we were done. I don't think, from the top of my head anyway, I don't think I've ever seen anyone tough out a heel hook. Mm-hmm. It's usually an instant tap. And I think really the referee could have even took the verbal tap if he's screaming on the floor, you know what I mean? Like Tony Ferguson sometimes has got to be safe from himself, and he's going to let someone rip his whole knee apart. But I think, at some point your corner or a referee needs to say, okay, it's like the Jacare fight, which I'm sure we'll get onto later. Once his arms snap, we're not fighting on anymore. And just because you can't see the ligament snap, I'm sure they are, and I'm sure it's another lengthy layoff. So I wouldn't have minded if the referee stepped in and said verbal submission. But Tony Ferguson's the toughest guy, pretty much in the world. So that's why people love him. He did what we would expect to do, but it was very, very weird. I honestly can't remember anyone toughing out a heel hook that tight. It looked bad. And really Oliveira and Daryush should both have submission wins, but Tony Ferguson's just too tough to let them have it, and he ends up getting decisions. So
yeah,
he's still got that at least.
No, 100%. And the one thing, you did say you want to see Ferguson take on some lower-level competition. I agree with that, but I don't think you give him up-and-coming guys. I don't think you give him a Fiziev or anyone. I just don't think you do that anymore. I think he goes into the Legacy League with the Diaz's and people like that. I think that's more where he should be fighting right now. Carlos Condit was a name that I heard someone saying on some podcasts. I thought that was quite interesting. A move to welterweight might be beneficial for him because, he wouldn't have to cut the weight. So maybe he'd perform better. But you're not going to put him against any of the wrestlers there because he can't stop the takedowns at 55. He's not going to stop him at 170. What do you think of a fight against a Diaz brother or Carlos Condit or someone like that?
Yeah, I think Nick Diaz is the perfect opponent.
Hmm.
I think that's a good, good fight to have on any pay-per-view. It could headline any fight night card. I think that's great. I think you could have him in with Masvidal. You could have him in with Diaz. You could have him, just put him in as a striker. Like we don't really. I know it's MMA, but there is a certain point where, you know, just match. It's just about matchmaking, and the UFC don't seem to like doing this. But I feel like there's still so much Tony Ferguson can give to the sport. I feel like he can still get a lot of money out the sport. There's a lot of money to be made. So although he's not his best anymore, I don't think he would be vulnerable against these type of people I'm speaking about. I think he'd be fine, and the UFC would make a load of money. Tony'd make a load of money. The Diaz's can make a load of money, and the fans would love it. So yeah, I think there's something for him there, and I've been saying for ages I want to see all these. And welterweight seems to be the division for it. There's lots of legends, and I want to see him go in with all these. I think he can step up to welterweight and have some really fun fights. And yeah, I'd love to see it, and I hope that's what we see.
And that's the thing, right? The fans love him. You saw when he walked out, he got the biggest cheer of all the fighters. Even the press conference, he was the only one that got cheered. People want to see Tony Ferguson fight, but we don't want to see him fight guys who are just like gonna take him down and grapple him. And that's the sport, like you said. But he's at that point in his career where he's not going to make huge adjustments in his wrestling capabilities. He's not going to learn how to stop these takedowns. And you know what? Maybe he would have been capable of stopping Daryush's takedowns 2 years ago. But the Tony today needs to be in these fun fights, and hopefully that's what we see. We'll keep rolling down the card. Before that, we had another one on the main card that I didn't think was that great a scrap between Matt Snell and Rodgerio Bontorin. What do you think?
Yeah, it was one of them. It's especially for those UK and European guys.
Mm-hmm.
4 a.m, they put this, or 3:30 a.m, they put this fight on, and really it weren't the best because Bontorin was threatening with that power, and Chanel was cautious of going in and trading with him. He was trying to pop shot him, and it didn't do it. He didn't do enough. So I think the judges got it right. Bontorin goes on with a good win. Yeah, I think that's probably moving it up even though it was a bantamweight, I think it should still move him up the flyweight ranks because they're both flyweights taking it on like late notice. So yeah, good win for him. I did expect Snell to look better. He looked hesitant. It weren't a great performance from him. He'll go back to the drawing board, but Bontorin moves on.
Yeah, and maybe Bontorin will get that fight against Alex Perez that Snell was meant to have. That might make sense. Not a whole lot more to say on that one. Before that, we had women flyweights, Caitlin Chukagian against Viviane Araújo. And look, in this fight, Araújo's power really showed in the first round. And then after that, I feel like there was a grappling exchange from memory. And then, yeah, she looked quite gassed. She looked like she didn't have much energy. And from that point on, Chukagian just took over. Is that what you saw?
Yeah, I think there was some level of controversy with the scorecards. I think some people think Vivian won. I don't think she did. I think she lost 2 rounds to 1. And Caitlin Chukagian, if that was a 5-round fight, she would have took her out because she was coming on really strong. She looked phenomenal. When she actually is in full flow, she's an exciting fighter to watch. And she's got that Holly Holm type of style where she's shouting with the punches, and she's vicious with them, and she's picking up the pace, and Araújo just couldn't keep up in the end. So for me, that was a good decision. It was a close fight, but I give it to Caitlin. And she's the girl of flyweight, isn't he? She's the one who I feel like she's capable of beating the majority of these contenders. But is she going to get another shot? I don't think she is. So she's got work to do. But she'll be in some fights in the meantime.
The problem is you can't beat Valentina if you're not a finisher. There's no way you're going to outpoint Valentina Shevchenko. So this is the problem for someone like Chukagian, who traditionally doesn't really get finishes. Not saying she can't. She could go in there and submit Valentina. I really can't say her knocking Valentina out. But she's going to have a lot of trouble in that matchup. But the thing is, in 3-round fights against these other contenders, she can just outpoint them for 3 rounds. So I feel like she's going to stay at the top for a long time. What did you think of that controversy with the tap? Did you think she actually tapped, or do you think she was like doing what she was doing?
No, I don't think she tapped. I think that's just the commentators didn't notice it. If there's someone in the back of UFC didn't point it out, I don't think anyone would have mentioned it. I don't think it should have been pointed out. I feel like she was trying to do something. It didn't look like a tap to me at all.
Yeah, we'll move on to the opening fight of the main card. My pick for the fight of the night when we preview this, and the actual fight of the night. What a war between Shane Burgos and Edson Barboza.
Yeah, Shane Burgos is he's up there with Tony Ferguson. Maybe not quite as tough, but he's one of the toughest men in the UFC. He's ridiculous. The amount of punishment he's took in them last two fights, because just before this, a while back now, but his last fight, he got absolutely beat up by Josh Emmett. He was still in their game and exchanging punches, but he was on the receiving end for the majority of that fight, and it was the same here. Barboza looked fantastic. He was throwing his kicks as we used to. He had his boxing going. But Burgos was in there and he was ripping him to the body. He was keeping him honest, but in the end, it was just too much for him, and his body just gave out on him. It was such a weird knockout. One of the weirdest knockouts I've ever seen. You know, we watch UFC every week, and we've seen these leg breaks, we've seen arms get broken, but I can't remember a knockout like that. It was very, very weird, and I was worried for Shane after that one.
Yeah, that was a really odd one. A bit of a delayed reaction on it. I watched like a little MMA doctor video on Twitter today where he was saying that sometimes when you get hit hard and you try and... He was saying that Burgos was like tricking his mind into like staying there for a bit, and obviously after a while your brain just shuts down. So hey, maybe he's the toughest man alive after Tony Ferguson, and he really did show it. He's got caught with two wheel kicks, and he still was standing, and not many people do that when they get caught by Barboza. But look, Barboza is a featherweight. We have to say this now. He belongs in that division, and I genuinely think he can make a run at the title. I want to see him in there against the Zabit, the Yair, the Korean Zombie, but I feel like he's fighting Ige. But all those top 5, top 10 guys, that's where I want to see him next. I don't know what Josh Emmett's doing. I feel like he's like injured or sitting out or something. Maybe that'd be a fun fight. What do you think's next for Barboza?
Yeah, I think Emmett could be the fight. I think he's got a torn ACL or something like that. So whenever he's back, but if Barboza wants to keep the ball rolling, maybe Calvin Guitar. I think he's a top contender, and I think I think he beat Danny Ige. I honestly do. Yeah. I think he should be 3-0 in the division, and he should be in these main event spots. I don't think he's stepped a foot wrong since he's moved to featherweight. So the fact that he's got a loss, it is pretty harsh. So I don't think that should prevent him from moving up. Him against Yair. Is Yair matched up? I don't think he is.
No, I don't think so.
So yeah, something like that. I think one of the top 5, I would happily see Edson in with one of them. He is a featherweight. He looks fantastic at the weight. I don't think he looked particularly bigger than Shane Burgos either, but Shane Burgos is a big guy. So yeah, Edson is a featherweight and he's a contender in my eyes. He looks fantastic. And the main thing for me is that he seems to take a shot better. He honestly does seem to take a shot better at featherweight than he did at lightweight, because I think a lot of the lightweights thought that was the way to beat him. You crack him and you can knock him out. Shane Burgos was hitting him clean, and he weren't flinching. He weren't taking a back step. He weren't worried about it at all. So, and Shane's a big puncher. So I really like Barboza at this weight. I think he's a true contender, and I hope he gets a big fight next.
Could you imagine how fun Holloway versus Barboza would be? Yeah,
that'd be sick. I think that's something Holloway might be game for as well. If he doesn't want to sit on the sidelines, and he can potentially, main event on a fight night card against Barboza over 5 rounds. That's a sick fight. I think Holloway might actually be up for that, because Barboza's got some name value as well. Mm-hmm. And we're gonna have a little sit now, aren't we, until we get that featherweight title fight? So, yeah, interesting one.
Yeah, we'll jump onto the prelims then, just pick out a few of them. We've got a couple here that were heading the preliminary card. Obviously, the feature prelim between Jacare and Andre Muniz. I didn't see that happening, didn't see Jacare being submitted, but, props to Muniz, and what an arm break that was.
Yeah, it was such a sweet submission, though. Like, Jacare, I know he's one of the most talented black belts about, but he just had no chance. The arm was locked in tight. Muniz done everything right, and it was just funny because the commentary was all about, oh, this Muniz guy is so disrespectful. He's saying he's a better grappler than Souza, and the next minute he's taking his arm on with him. So I do like that when Joe Rogan and co get above the station and start chatting. It was a brilliant win. It was the biggest win in his career, and it's the most impressive way anyone's beat Susan so far. I know he's been on a pretty bad losing streak, but these big middleweights, they throw leather and you can get knocked out anytime. That was pure skill from Muniz, and Jacare will be kicking himself to actually getting caught by that.
Yeah, and the biggest surprise to me was that after the arm broke, he didn't even seem to acknowledge it. He's kind of standing there like, oh, my arm's broken, whatever. What a tough guy. I don't know how he recovers from this and comes back. Do you reckon he fights again? Because how long is the recovery on something like that?
Probably quicker than a leg, you'd say, wouldn't you? But probably 6 months to a year anyway. But for me, I would prefer him to hang it up. But I think sometimes these injuries spare them on to say just to prove they can get back in there.
Yeah.
Like, he's 41 years old. I was saying before this, I expect them to lose, not like that, but I expect them to lose anyway because he's 41. I'm not like, unless you're Yoel Romero, I'm probably not picking you in your 40s or, at that type of age. So he hasn't showed that he's anywhere near his old level. And he's just lost to a guy who's relatively new in the UFC by submission. So there isn't really anything for him there, but I feel just because he's a competitor and he's been a champion for so long, he'll be determined to come back and at least compete one more time.
Look, I think it'd be more fun, in my opinion, if he was to retire from MMA, just go on to doing submission grappling tournaments. Like, One Championship are really trying to expand into that grappling whole thing. They signed Gordon Ryan. They've got a couple other grapplers over there, and they're running just grappling events like on their cards as opposed to MMA fights. And I feel like for Souza, once he's done fighting MMA, that's a good way for him to stay in the combat sports space and get mat time in. Do you think that's something you'd want to see him do?
Yeah, I'd love to see him do. I think in a few years we're gonna have some people just sticking to BJJ and making a lot of money doing it. I don't think we're far off. As you said, Warner getting involved. A lot of people, I think it's Flow Combat. They're putting on shows. I think there is a lot of people who want to see pure jiu-jitsu, and we've seen Eddie Bravo's try to create that combat jiu-jitsu stuff. So it's a mixture between the both. So I don't think we're too far away from seeing guys like Jacare, who might just be able to make a ton of money doing this. Will it be in time for him, to come back in the next year and do that and make enough money? I'd imagine he's on a pretty hefty UFC contract, considering he was already a champion when he came over. So, yeah, I think he'll be back. I think he'll want to get back in the win column. He wouldn't want to go out like that. He's a submission artist and he just has an arm, bro. He's not going to want to go out like that, but he might be forced to. He's in his 40s, as I said. So, just good luck with your recovery. And I hope we don't see him again, but I'm sure we will.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. Before that, we had another lightweight moving down to featherweight. Lando Vannata. Groovy Lando Vannata looked fantastic in his featherweight debut against Mark Grundy. I don't understand how you can score that 30-27 for Grundy, but I don't understand half of the scoring these judges do, so that wasn't too much of a shock. But what did you think of Vannata's performance?
Yeah, he looked great, and it's probably a move he should took a while ago. I knew Lando was fighting, but I didn't even put two and two together that he was moving down until fight week. And it's a great move because he is a small guy. He didn't look bigger than Grundy, but he was able to deal with the wrestling. And Grundy he was lost in there all night, wasn't he? Because as Din Thomas said on the broadcast, it was either all wrestling or all striking. It was very easy to predict for Vannata. So he had a great debut. He enjoyed it, and he just coasted to a decision. It weren't the most entertaining fight, and I'm sure Lando will put on some more impressive shows at featherweight. But I'm very happy to see him there, and I think he can move on pretty quickly to towards the rankings. I think he's a great fighter. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch, and I want to see him in there with great fighters.
Yeah, no, it was a great one. We'll keep rolling through these. Jordan Wright knocked out Jamie Pickett in round one. I think it was one of the better knockouts in the card. Did you see that one?
Yeah, he was just he got him early, didn't he? And then he just chased him. Jordan Wright, he nearly got caught running after him as well because they're big guys throwing bombs. But I think he did the right thing in the end. He closed the show. He made a statement, and especially was his last fight against Hakeem Buckley when he got knocked out. So yeah. I think it was. So, yeah, good to get back in the win column so quickly and make it look pretty easily. Because besides that Buckley fight, he's looked great since he signed for the UFC. So, excited to see him again because he's a different type of guy, isn't he? He's the Beverly Hills Ninja. So, good win for him. Great knockout.
Okay, and the last one I'll grab on the card is Andrea Lee submits Antonina Shevchenko. I thought this was pretty impressive performance by Lee. I expected this performance, though. It wasn't a shock. I think she finished it with an armbar. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was triangle. It was a triangle for about 3 minutes, and then she just switched it to an armbar. Yeah, brilliant stuff because the clock was running out as well, so there was a few seconds left in that round, and she persevered and she got it. But she looked like a savage in there, and she's someone who's been hard done by the judges lately. I think it was 3 in a row, split decisions, was it? So, I like the fact that she went in there, took the fight into her own hands, and got the submission win. It was a very, very impressive win against Antonina. Big statements. And she's a flyweight. Again, she'll mix it with anyone. They're all around the same level, these girls, and she just stood out. And I'm sure she'll feel hard done by not getting a bonus. And I know Muniz definitely will feel hard, but he's just snapped Jacare Souza's arm and he didn't get a bonus. So this is just testament to what a great card we had.
I believe Muniz did get a bonus. Who got the second bonus?
Christos Gygos, the first fight of the night with his Daryush joke.
Yeah. Do you want to speak about any of those early prelims? I didn't catch them.
No, obviously the first fight tonight it was a sick choke, but I do think level of competition comes into it, and I think for me, breaking Jacare's arm deserves 70k more than that. I think they all deserve money to be. I hope the UFC are slapping everyone and on odd 70k here, but yeah, great first card, and Gina Mazzani, she looked good early, but then she ended up getting finished by Priscilla. So that was a good fight as well. It was just an all-round great card. I think it over-delivered, besides that Tony Ferguson fight, which was, disappointing. I think the card as a whole was an absolute banger. We had the weird knockouts. We had, limbs breaking as it seems to be commonplace now. And I think all like UFC 261, 262, and now we've got 263 coming up. It's it's a great time to be a UFC fan.
Yeah, 100%. We'll move on to the card coming up this weekend. UFC Fight Night, Font versus Garbrandt. Interesting fight in the bantamweight division. There's also a co-main in the women's strawweight division that's going to be quite important for title implications. We'll jump straight in at the top, but Rob Font taking on Cody Garbrandt. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Very interesting because Rob Font is obviously... He hasn't been the guy who's been at the top of the division, for that long. He's just picked up a great win over Marias, who was coming off that, coming off a couple defeats, wasn't he? Could knock out defeats, so that was a good win. But this is a huge fight for him now. Cody was expected to move down to flyweight, and he didn't. So I really don't know how this goes because I think Rob Font will be confident of putting it on Cody and knocking him out. It's if Cody's made the adjustments. It seemed like he'd made the adjustments against Assunção last time out. Is he smart enough to stay? Is he smart enough to not trade with Rob Font? And if he is, I think he might be able to box him to a decision.
Look, the thing is, this is a 5-round fight, so he's going to stay 25 minutes without getting sucked into a war, right? And we've seen it twice now. 3 times actually. Twice against TJ and then again against Pedro Munoz, where he just got sloppy and ended up getting himself finished, trading and getting himself finished. And I feel like over 25 minutes, Font's going to force him into that. I think that'll be Font's game plan. Let me try and get him throwing and try and turn this into a phone booth boxing fight. And in that situation... maybe Font knocks him out, that we've seen it twice now, or 3 times or whatever it is. So I think that's the probably how this fight goes if I'm picking. But alternatively, maybe we see Garbrandt get back to some wrestling, Marias had some success when he fought Font, taking him down and grappling for a little bit there. Maybe that's a method for Garbrandt just to I don't know, earn some rounds and keep it off the feet. And also, I don't want to discredit Garbrandt's power because he can knock Font out as well. I just think that it'd be unwise for him to sit there and trade.
I think the best version of Cody we've seen is that one where he beat Dominic Cruz. And what he did there, he was using his power. He clearly had the power to put him away, but he was very smart in that fight in the fact that he didn't choose to rush in. It was a points decision and it was a very good one. And I think that's the version that's going to take him back to, title shots and avoid him getting knocked out in this fight because Rob Font is a banger. And if he's not on it, he will get knocked out. It's just, you'd think after them 3 knockout losses, he would be switched on to that. And is he? That's the question for me. Is he smart enough to make the changes and stay out of it, stay out of that scrap? I think he is. I think he's got to be. He's approaching 30 now. It's time. It's time to get back in there, back in the mix, and this is a good fight to do it. Another main event. He's a big star. All he needs is just to look fantastic as we've seen him look previously. He just needs to do it again.
And for both these guys, this is the perfect spot for them because obviously TJ was meant to fight Sandhagen a couple of weeks ago. It didn't happen. So now if someone comes out here and puts on a really good performance, maybe they find themselves in the next title shot. Do you think that's a possibility, or do you think it'll still be the TJ versus Sandhagen winner? Or do you think potentially maybe the winner of this fight fights the winner of TJ and Sandhagen, depending on how long until Sterling comes back?
Yeah, I think that's more likely. You might see the winner of this fight and TJ Sandhagen winner. It all depends, really. I think Cody might go down to flyweight, whatever happens. That's just the quickest route to a title shot. And if he can make 125, why not? You know, he doesn't seem like the biggest guy. Rob Font, he's not. I don't think this will get him a title shot. Let's be honest, Cody, as impressive as his last win was, he's still 3 in a row before that. So this isn't necessarily, you know, like a number one contenders fight, undeniable. Rob Font has beaten Marlon Moraes, who's on a losing streak. Cody, who's just finished the losing streak. So I think Rob Font will still have to work to do to, you know, to build his name and build his brand. So getting that TJ or Sandhagen winner would be huge for him. But yeah, there's lots to happen, isn't it? We've got to go Jan again. Then we've got to go TJ Sandhagen. So whoever wins this could be waiting a while.
Yeah, it's going to be a long road to a title man away, that's for sure. Well, we'll move on to the women's strawweight fight in the co-main event between Yan Xinon versus Carla Esparza. I think this is probably a number one contender fight. Do you agree with me there?
Yeah, it's these are definitely two of the best at the weights. I think Carla Esparza, I'm a big fan. I've always been a big fan. She's a proper gamer, and she has to work for everything she gets. She's not the most, like, she's not a brilliant, you know, technical striker, but she gets in there and she puts punches on people. Just pure pressure, pure desire. I do like her style. Yan is kind of the next one coming up, and I think we have seen that people who are elite level will beat Carla Esparza. I think Joanna dealt with it really easily. Who was it Tatiana Suarez knocked it out as well. Mm-hmm. So I do think if Yan is going to be the next a potential title winner and someone who might hold on to the belt, she should run through Carla. It's just, is she that? We're not sure yet. So far, she's been it's all been decisions in the UFC. So I think it'll be close. I think it'll be tight, and it could be a split on the cards. I don't really have a pick.
Yeah, I don't think I have a pick either. I expect Esparza probably try and grapple a little bit in this one, and Xinon, Yan just to keep it standing and try and outpoint her. But with these fights, like every time we break down one of these women's strawweights fights at this level, it's like it's hard to make a pick because most of them aren't fighters with that knockout power that's going to just flash you out. So yeah, it could go either way, really. Any last thoughts on this before we move on?
No, and it's the same as I say with flyweight. They're all capable of beating each other on the night, and as you said, it's not necessarily about one punch. And so many of these fights go to decision and go to split decisions. You know, they're all very well matched up. So I think it's the same again. I think whoever, you know, has that final push, wants that a bit more, will get the win on this one. And yeah, and as you said, it could be a potential number one contender fight. So lots on the line.
For sure. And then before that, we have Justin Taffer taking on Jared Vendera in the heavyweight division. I expect this one to probably end in the first. I hopefully it ends in the first because you know how we get those heavyweight fights every now and then. Who are you taking in this one?
It's not the best fight, is it, to be on the main card? Both relatively new to the UFC. Jared just lost. Who beat Jared last time? He's a lovely guy. Like we spoke. Yeah, we spoke to him a few times. Jared's, who did he beat? Yeah, I'd probably edge towards Taffer. I think it's a well-matched fight, and I'd say it's a level below Spivak, one above Henry Hunsucker, or if that was his name. So it's a good match for Vendera to see how good he is. I just think Taffer might have a bit too much.
Yeah, I'll probably take Taffer too. And I think aside from his debut when he got knocked out, Taffer hasn't looked too bad, you know. And who did he get knocked out by? I feel like he just got cut, right? Who was his? Let me have a look. Jorgen De Castro, right?
Got knocked out by.
Yeah, okay. And then obviously lost to Carlos Felipe in his last one by split decision. I remember that being a bit of a war, that fight. I thought that was a pretty entertaining fight. But yeah, he definitely lost that one. I don't know. I'll probably lean towards Taffer as well. I think he's got knockout power and he probably finds a shot and puts him away. But who knows?
I think he looked good in that fight as well against Felipe. From what my memory, it was a very close split decision. I don't think I don't think anyone would argue if he got the win. I think he looked good. It was kind of power against volume, and volume, paid dividends for Felipe. But it was a good fight, and 27 years old. I think he is Taffer as well. So plenty of stuff to do, plenty of growing to do, and I expect him to win.
For sure. Before that, women's featherweight, which is still a division, surprisingly, because I don't think we've seen a women's featherweight fight since the title fight, between Felicia Spencer and Norma Dumont. Not familiar with Norma Dumont, so maybe you are and you can answer some questions. But Spencer coming back after her last win, which I believe was a TKO win. Am I correct in saying that, or did she get a decision win?
I can't even remember. I honestly do not give two shits about this division. Like people say we're bashing women, and that's exactly not what we're doing. This division's got about 5 fighters in it. What is the point? I like, Bellator have at least got a few, they've got Julia Budd in there, who's a potential contender, and they've got a few fighters. They've got Katlyn and Gonzalo. So I'm all for women's featherweights. This just isn't it. Everyone's lost to Nunes, who Megan Anson's been cut. What is the point of this division? Why are we doing featherweight fights? Like Felicia Spencer, what's the goal for Felicia Spencer now? She beats Norma Dumont, and then what does she do? What does she do? I'm not sure. So I remember this Dumont because she got beat by Megan Hansen, and for me at that time I was thinking Megan Hansen's going to get a title shot off the back of this win, and this girl clearly isn't, anywhere near Amanda Nunes' level. So why are we doing this? I don't get it. Obviously, I like Felicia Spencer. She's a good fighter. Why are we seeing her fight at featherweight in the UFC? I prefer them cut her and let her go to Bellator and let them build a good featherweight division. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, always good to see Spencer back in action. I'd prefer she'd either go down to 135 or just go to Bellator.
Look, I'm not familiar with Dumont at all, but I'll take a safe pick in this one and say Spencer probably takes her down and finds a finish at some point in this fight. All grounds are out. Do you think that's a safe assumption?
Yeah, I think there's a safe fight to lose. And MMA maths tell you Megan Hansen beats her pretty easily. Spencer beats Hansen, and Spencer should beat Dumont. I know it doesn't always work, but that's the way I think it's going to go. I think Spencer will win this fight. For me, there's just nothing in it, because what's she going to do? Is she going to challenge for the title again? Is anyone going to pay to watch that? They're not going to pay to watch that, are they, anytime soon? So she's in a weird spot, and I think the UFC want to scrap that division, but Amanda Nunes calls the shot. She's the champ, and why not let her defend? If there's someone there to defend against, I don't mind her keeping that belt. But right now there just doesn't seem to be anyone, and UFC don't seem to be signing anyone to push towards that title. So there's nothing on the line for Spencer in this fight, and any fight moving forward if she carries on fighting a featherweight.
Yeah, no, you're right, 100%. Well, before that one, we have flyweights David Dvorak versus Rulian Paiva. I'm not too sure of picking this one. Do you have a pick in this one? What do you think?
Not particularly. I'm just looking through both the records now. So it seems Paiva's been... I'm not even too familiar with both of these guys. Let me check. Sometimes the records remind me who they are. No, it's a good... I probably would edge towards Dvorak if he's got that win over Jordan Espinosa. Good win. Bruno Silva, another good win. So yeah, I would edge towards him. But as we say, this card's not the strongest. That's another fight that, kind of like the women's strawweight fight, where I'm not expecting anything too spectacular, but as we always say, someone's capable of, springing an upset, springing a surprise, and here we are, we'll look stupid. So not the most exciting fight. I'd edge towards Dvorak just looking at the records, but who knows?
Well, the fight that probably should be the co-main event, it could even potentially be the main event if... I don't know about that. It's a bit of a stretch. But it should be the co-main event is Jack Hermansson taking on Edmund Shabazian. It was meant to take place on UFC 262. Got moved late notice. It's happening this coming weekend. I really like this fight. I think it's a great matchup for both guys. And it's going to be a good test for Shabazian to see where he belongs, because until he got taken out by Brunson, he was looking fantastic. So if Hermansson can take him out, that'll really shut down the hype there. However, if he can get back in the win column here, what do you think that does for him?
Yeah, and it's huge for Shabazzian because he's got to, prove that he's still a contender. I personally think that Hermansson is even a tougher fight than Derek Brunson. I honestly do. I don't think they're doing him any favors here. Hermansson is a top contender. He's a heavy grappler as well, so that's the issues that Shabazzian had in that one. But then Hermansson's got to be careful because Shabazzian, as we said, he's been absolutely sparking guys. Knocking them out on the feet. He's looked sensational. If he can go away, make some changes, come back and be better. It's a tough night for Manson, but I just don't. I think it's too quick of a turnaround. I don't think he should be back in at this level quite yet. And I think Hermansson will be able to dominate him on the floor and probably, get the TKO finish or a submission win.
It is one of those where it's kind of thrown him to the wolves, hey? Like giving him Brunson to Hermansson back to back. It's like they're not giving him a tune-up at all. But that could be a good thing. Maybe he just had an off night against Brunson. I don't know. I really don't know because before he fought Brunson, we didn't see him against these top guys. Tavares has been around for a long time. Tavares isn't one of those top guys anymore. So it wasn't really telling when he got that win, even though he got it in such great fashion. I really like this fight. If I'm making a pick on it, I'm taking Hermansson as well. But I won't be surprised. I won't be too surprised if I see Shabazzian pull something off here.
Yeah, I think there is a gap between Brad Tavares and Derek Brunson and Jack Hermansson. I think there is a middle ground there where, I know he's just been in a couple of fights, but Kevin Holland, someone of that level, I think Hermansson is potentially 2 wins from a title shot. I think Brunson is in the same position now as well. So there is a level just below where he's fighting right now, where I think Shabazzian should be. But nonetheless, it's a huge opportunity. And if he goes and knocks out Hermansson, the ball starts rolling again. He's a potential contender. So I'm sure he's very happy to be in this situation. Just that from a fan perspective, and if I was his coach, I'd say maybe leave Hermansson just for now. But they know better than me, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's not too much on these prelims here. We got Bill Algeo, Ben Rothwell, Court McGee. Any of these fights you really want to dive into, or we'll just move on to news? What do you think?
No, nothing particularly stands out. There's obviously some names that we're looking forward to seeing, but as we said, it's not the strongest card, but there's a couple of really good fights on there that I'm looking forward to. And we've just had UFC 262, so we can't complain too much. It's just a little lull, but nonetheless, we'll have some good fights and we'll have some. I really do like that main event. I think it's a great 50-50 fight and could go either way, as the middleweight fight could as well. We've just spoke about. So, some good fights the week after the pay-per-view. It's all we can ask for.
Should be a fun one. Do some news before we wrap it up. Let me just have a look what we've got here. Do you have anything else top of your head?
What have we got?
We'll do some
it's
boxing.
All just reactions. Yeah, the AJ Fury seems to be getting closer, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what's coming up. Like that's where it's meant to be, Saudi Arabia or something in August. So
yeah, it's meant to be on the same day as UFC London. I know. The UFC said the other day they're not planning any cards outside of the Apex until next year, but by all assumptions, they really are. Ariel Helwani reported that they're going to London, and now they're building the card. So Darren Till against Brunson has been announced for August 14th. Molly McCann's just been announced for August 14th. They're building an English card, and according to Ariel Helwani, it's going to be in London on August 14th, the same day as Joshua takes on Fury, which for me would... It seems a bit crazy, to be fair. I think it would be smarter to do. Maybe they're doing an all English card in America because, like, to fill a stadium, if that's the plan, are they going to fill a stadium when the biggest fight in British boxing history is going on? I'm not sure. And then it could be a clash in terms of time, so TV money and things like that gets affected. But I'm happy. I'm happy to come back, but it's a weird date to pick.
Yeah, that is odd. I don't know why. I do know why Fury versus Joshua is in Saudi Arabia because money. But I think that really should have been done in the UK in front of a huge packed stadium, right? And how's the COVID situation there? Can they run big packed stadiums, or what's it like?
That's the problem. I think they're getting. I think either way, even if COVID wasn't going on, it wouldn't be in England because the money's elsewhere. But I think it's a good excuse right now because our government's just not reliable in terms of, could they guarantee that on August 14th, you are allowed 90,000 people in this stadium for this fight. There's no way they can do that. They can't even guarantee that they're going to open the pubs. So I think the Joshua and Fury for now can go to Saudi Arabia without getting too much stick and make a bunch of money. Hopefully the second fight is back in the UK. But huge fight. And, on TV or whatever, I'm very happy to be watching it.
Second fight. So you think it's a couple of fight deal, same way the Wilder one was, do you?
Yeah, it's already done. I'm pretty sure the winner will take 60%, the loser takes 40%, and they'll do another one straight away after it. I think a couple of belts might get dropped just due to mandatories, but they'll do it straight after.
And so where do you think that puts the Wilder vs Fury trilogy then? Because that was meant to happen next. Obviously, it looks like Wilder's taking some time off to work on his boxing. And by all accounts, he's worked on a lot. I saw some footage of him working a jab, working going backwards. So obviously, he's preparing to fight Fury again. Where do you think these fights against Anthony Joshua put that in the timeline of things?
I think the plan is to get them both done this year. So if one takes place in August, the other one can take place in December. Or November. I think that is the plan, to get it all done in 2021. And Wilder probably does need some time. He could probably do with a tune-up fight. He could fight Andy Ruiz. He could fight, someone else. Get himself back in the win column. Because let's be honest, is there any interest particularly in seeing Fury fight Wilder again? From my side, there's really not, because he got his head boxed off for the majority of the first fight. The second fight, he got dominated start to finish and got stopped. So I think he does need to do something to earn that shot again. He needs to, knock someone out and look sensational, and then people will start talking about him again. But then Anthony Joshua beats Fury, and then it's to the races with a Wilder fight, because I think a lot of people think Joshua is chinny and that Wilder would be able to get him. So that would be something you could sell as well. So I don't think Wilder will be too worried, because he is sitting in the wings. He's the third man. And once this is all played out, he's in for a monster payday, isn't he?
Yeah, and I will just make an early pick on that fight, and I think that Tyson Fury is just too technical. Tyson Fury is the best boxer in the world in the heavyweight division right now, in my opinion, and I expect him to take Anthony Joshua out in that one. What do you think?
I think it's a 50-50 fight. I think the majority of people are going with Fury. They think he's too good, he's too slick, but Joshua, he's maybe not as powerful as Wilder, but he puts his punches together better. He's more of a boxer. He's pretty technical. We've seen in his recent fights, he's been really technical. So he's capable of mixing it up. He can box, he can punch, and he could cause problems. But it's hard to pick against Fury, because we've never seen him beat, and he's caused huge upsets. He's beat Klitschko, he beat Wilder off the couch. We come from 400 pounds or whatever he was, and depressed and on the verge of suicide, to coming up and beating Wilder, who picked him, let's be honest, because he thought he was an easy touch, and he got upset there, and then he got upset again. So it's hard not to pick Fury, but for me it is a 50-50 fight. Fair
enough. Did you find any other news, or are we gonna wrap it up there?
No, we can wrap it up, because it is all George St. Pierre against Oscar De La Hoya. Apparently that was the fight he wanted. GSP was in, Oscar De La Hoya was in, the UFC shut it down, and if you've seen at the post-fight press conference, Dana White's just sick of talking about these guys, isn't he? But the UFC aren't having it. I think Triller needs to move on. Tyron Woodley's a free agent. Go and fight Tyron Woodley, instead of trying to poach the UFC's best fighters. George St. Pierre is one of the biggest stars in the sport. If he's returning to combat sports, do you think the UFC are just going to go, take our $1 million assets? They're not going to do that. So it's business, and people don't like it. And George St. Pierre maybe should be free to do what he wants so many years after retirement. But if he wants to fight, come back to MMA and fight Usman, or fight someone, that's worth fighting, rather than a 50-old man in boxing. Yeah, I'm kind of with the UFC on this one.
I do wonder what that's like for George St. Pierre, because he is under contract with the UFC, but I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this, so if anyone's listening, don't quote me on it, but I believe the UFC has an obligation to offer him fights, and if they don't offer him fights, he can leave the organization. I feel like he can take him to court and get out of his contract. Do you think the UFC is offering him fights? Do you think he's just not taking them?
It depends, doesn't it? It depends if he's in the USADA testing pool. It depends if he's actually confirmed that he's retired and things like that. So, I'm sure, like, I think the thing with McGregor was they weren't offering McGregor fights because he'd said he's retired. So I think once someone's hints that they don't want to fight, they don't have to offer them. I'm not sure how the contract works, but I'm sure the UFC are making St. Pierre offers, but I think he might want more money to come back and want it to be a certain weight and things like that. So they can't agree. So the same with John Jones, as we're seeing John Jones isn't fighting, but I'm sure the UFC is saying you can fight, Stipe Miocic for this amount of money, and that's where the conflict comes.
Yeah, I don't even want to get on that one. That one's so annoying. I seen Dana talking to the press conference saying that Derek Lewis and Ngannou is a thing, and he was saying that if Jones wants to fight, he can fight in summer. Otherwise, he can never fight. It's like, we know Jones wants to fight. He just wants more money. It's very frustrating as a fan who wants to see that fight happen. And also, I'm not trying to heap the frustration on Dana White. Obviously, Jones is a big part of this. Like, if he wants to fight, and he's not going to get the money that he's after, I don't see the UFC budging, so I feel like he's going to have to come down his number. Do you reckon I'm right on that?
It doesn't seem like the UFC are even entertaining his conversation. It just seems like Dana White's like so over it. He's like, I'm not speaking about this because it's so ridiculous. And Dana White has said that he wants 30 million guaranteed, which is, Conor McGregor doesn't get 30 million guaranteed. So what he's trying to do, but John Jones has denied saying that. So it's a messy situation, and in the meantime, I think we've just got to enjoy what's happening because, Francis Ngannou is a very exciting champion to have. Derek Lewis is a very worthy contender. That's a great fight there. Then you've got a potential trilogy fight against Stipe Miocic, and John Jones has been hesitant his whole career to move up to heavyweight. We've been speaking about this since, 10 years. I feel like we've been speaking about John Jones moving to heavyweight. He doesn't seem particularly keen on the move, so he's spoken up, he's doing all these things, but then maybe he's pricing himself out. I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes, but I'm trying not to get too excited about John Jones. I'm trying to focus on what's actually happening, and if John Jones moves to the heavyweight and we get that fight, it's just a bonus.
Yeah, hopefully you see it. We'll wrap it up there. It's been a long one. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll speak to you after all the action on the weekend to recap and break it all down. Cheers for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.